Have you ever stopped to think about how a park, or a street, or a public square actually gets designed? We tend to assume these places are for everyone, but what if they're not? In this explainer, we're going to dig into some amazing academic research that basically gives us a blueprint for creating public spaces that are genuinely inclusive, safe, and, liberating for all of us. Okay, let's get into it.
So let's just start with this massive question. Who are our cities really built for? I mean, it's so easy to think of a city as just this neutral backdrop for our lives, right? But the thing is, every single bench, every bus route, every building, it's all been designed with a certain kind of person in mind. And for a very, very long time, that person, well, it wasn't everybody.
And check this out. This slide really drives the point home. This is a real poster that literally tells housewives to please finish traveling by 4 o'clock and leave the buses, trams, and trains for war workers. It's just such a stark reminder that our public spaces have been designed to enforce gender roles, basically treating women's presence as, secondary to the real business of the city.
So this gets to our first really crucial point. Cities are not neutral ground. They are products of history, and they've been shaped by power structures that have always prioritized some groups over others. This means that the challenges faced by women, by gender-diverse people, and other marginalized communities, they're not accidents. They're often built right into the concrete.
Researchers Linda Peek and Geraldine Pratt just nail it with this quote. For centuries, our whole society has run on this really simple but incredibly powerful binary. The home, the private world, that was a woman's domain. But the city, the public world of work and politics, that was a man's world. And that single idea has shaped literally everything, from our transportation networks to our zoning laws.
Okay, so if our cities have all these hidden biases baked right in, how do we even begin to see them? How can we analyze them? Well, that's what's next. We're going to build a toolkit. Drawing from the research, we can actually develop a whole framework for seeing our cities through a completely new set of eyes.
And the most important tool in this whole kit is something called an intersectional lens. It's basically a way of seeing that gets that a person's experience isn't just defined by one thing, like their gender. No way. It's about how all these different parts of who we are, our gender, our race, our class, our sexuality, our ability, how they all intersect and overlap to create totally unique and specific experiences of the world.
So for our explainer, we're going to use these 5 specific lenses. We'll start with a feminist perspective, of course, focusing on gender roles, but then we're going to add a racial justice perspective to look at the experiences of racialized folks and migrants. Then a class perspective to think about money and inequality. We'll also apply a queer theory lens, which helps us challenge norms around sexuality. And finally, a disability justice perspective, which is all about making things accessible for every single body. This is going to give us a much richer, way more complete picture. All right, we've got our toolkit. Let's put it to work. We're going to apply these lenses to some of the key findings from the research on women in cities and see what they really show us.
This point from the research is just so critical. The fear of violence in public spaces, it is not a one-size-fits-all experience. It changes completely depending on who you are. The concerns of a Black transgender woman in a park at night are going to be fundamentally different from those of a white cisgender man, right? And this table perfectly illustrates how our toolkit works. When you apply a feminist and racial justice lens, you immediately see that a lack of safety doesn't affect everyone equally. It disproportionately restricts the freedom of racialized women. Then you layer on a queer theory lens, and you start to notice how public spaces often just assume everyone is straight and cisgender. Think about gendered bathrooms or ads that only show straight couples. All that stuff can make LGBTQIA+ people feel invisible, unwelcome, or even unsafe. Now let's switch gears and talk about work. The research points out that city design is often obsessed with this one simple commute, from a house in the suburbs to an office downtown. But that completely ignores the complex, unpaid labor of what's called social reproduction. We're talking school runs, grocery shopping, caring for elderly parents. These multi-stop, zigzag trips across the city are disproportionately done by women, and that burden is often way heavier for working class and migrant women who might not have cars and have to rely on really inefficient public transit.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. These maps from the research show us exactly how these issues play out on the ground. On the left, you're seeing the travel routes of domestic workers in Manila. Their movements are totally dictated by where the wealthy neighborhoods are. On the right, the map of Georgetown, Guyana, highlights areas where economic instability forces women into specific and often unsafe travel patterns. In both cases, their daily lives are being shaped by cities that were just never designed with them in mind. Okay, so we've used our lenses to really see the problems clearly. Now for the fun part. Let's pivot from analysis to action. How can this research act as a blueprint for actually designing better, more liberating spaces?
Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road. The research tells us that all this unpaid care work is basically invisible to planners. So a feminist design principle would be to make that work visible and supported. Imagine a park that doesn't just have a playground shoved in a corner. Imagine one that integrates it with community gardens, with accessible restrooms that have changing tables, with seating areas where parents and caregivers can actually connect. This also supports that class perspective, making free, amazing public resources central to community life.
Let's take another one. The research identifies that fear of violence is a huge barrier. A truly liberating design tackles this head-on, not just by adding more surveillance, but with thoughtful design that promotes what you could call natural surveillance. Things like clear lines of sight, good lighting that gets rid of all those creepy dark corners, and this ties right into disability justice too. Well-lit, clear paths are way safer for people with visual impairments or folks who use mobility aids. It's all about creating safety through community and good design for everyone. So this brings us to our conclusion. And really, it brings us right back to you. Because these ideas aren't just for city planners or academics in an ivory tower. They are tools for every single one of us to reimagine the spaces we live in every day.
So why does all this matter? Well, because the spaces we live in literally shape our freedom, our opportunities, and our sense of belonging. Inclusive design isn't about catering to one group. It's about creating a richer, safer, more vibrant community for absolutely everyone. And what we're calling a feminist park here, it's really just a blueprint for a truly public space, one that serves the public in all its amazing diversity.
So I want to leave you with this final thought, this question. Take these analytical lenses we've been talking about today and try applying them to your own neighborhood, your favorite park, or the main street in your town. What do you see? And even more importantly, what would a space that is truly designed for liberation look like, right where you live?